So today, based on what I learned from TESOL class, I would like to briefly introduce the article called Investigating a Collaborative Approach to Peer Feedback by Ali Arshraida and Naomi Storr. So this is the overview of what I'm going to present. I will start with introduction, the study, data analysis, finding, discussion, and conclusions. And before we start the introduction of this paper, I came up with these 3 questions, which include keywords from the paper. First, what are the collaborative writing and peer feedback activity? And what are the deliberation and languaging? And what are the pros and cons of peer feedback? So the researchers of this paper, they came up with the elaboration of collaborative writing and peer feedback. They state that a collaborative writing task is one where 2 or more writers share responsibility for a jointly composed text. And peer feedback is an activity that requires learners to be involved in reading and evaluating each other's draft. And the authors of the paper, they didn't write what deliberation means here, but they mentioned that the collaborative writing activities encourage learners to deliberate about the ideas to include in their joint text and how best to express such ideas. And during this deliberation process, the learners provide each other with suggestions, including both positive and negative feedback. And the researcher Swain used the term languaging to describe these deliberations. So now let's go over some positive and negative views on peer activity. So starting with the positive aspect, the peer activity can improve learners' writing skills. And also, reading a peer's text can expose the feedback provider to different ideas and different ways of expressing ideas. And regarding the negative views, the learners may concern about their own ability to evaluate their peers' writing, and this could result in some reluctance for learners to provide critical comments for their peers. So for the study part here, I will briefly go over class and participants and study procedure. So starting with class and participant information. As regard to the class setting, this study was conducted in 2 EFL writing classes in a male-only college in Saudi Arabia. The focus of the classes are developing students' writing skills and grammatical accuracy. For the given information about the participants, the proficiency level is in the range of intermediate to high intermediate, and the total number of students is 38. And for the data collection period, there were 2 sessions. Each session took about 60 minutes long. And the aim of the study is comparisons on the quantity and quality of the feedback provided in 2 different formats, which are collaborative and individuals. So here, I'm going to go over the study procedures, which is divided into session 1 and session 2. And to make the procedure easy to see, I have divided them into 3 steps. So starting with step 1, one of the researchers provided brief instructions on peer feedback at the beginning, and the researchers explained what peer feedback is and encouraged participants to provide both positive and negative comments of the text that they reviewed. Next is step 2, which is session 1, collaborative writing and feedback activity. Here, the students were asked to write collaboratively and in self-selected pairs. Then they were asked to exchange their text with another pairs and provide feedback on the other pair's text. And each pair revised their text in response to the feedback they received. And then are the versions of the text which include original text containing the peers' feedback comments, and the revised text were collected at the end of the sessions. And the last step is step 3, which is session 2, individual writing and feedback activity. Here, the basic procedure is the same as session 1, with a similar time period given to each task, but the students worked on a different topic individually. Then the students completed a brief survey to list their views about peer feedback activities. So the number of data collected were 2 versions of 2 texts, which are one written collaboratively and the other individually with peer feedback comments, and completed questionnaire for each participant. Before moving on to the result of the study, let's look at how the researchers analyzed the participants' positive and negative feedback. So what are the peer feedback points? Peer feedback points include correction comments that are placed in the body of the text as well as end comments. So these are the feedback points here. The feedback on structures deals with issues such as absence of an introduction or topic sentences. And the feedback on contents, it focuses on the adequacy of ideas and whether the participants are sufficiently developed. And within the feedback on language, it is divided into 3 points, which are grammar, expressions, and mechanics. And our feedbacks on language is coded for whether it's direct or indirect. All comments appearing in the body of the text and under the text are analyzed for whether they were positive or negative. And for the other things that should be noted, the researchers considered not only how many students prefer one form of feedback to another, but also the reasons given when they analyzed the survey responses. So now I will summarize the finding part. So these are the 4 aspects that I will go over. The table 1 summarized the finding comparing the feedback provided by pairs collaborative formats and by individual formats. And as you can see here, the table shows the quantity of the feedback points and its focus and what the feedback on language dealt with. And in terms of average number, students working collaboratively showed slightly more feedback points than individual learners. And feedback provided by both pairs and individuals was mainly on local language issues rather than global issues such as structure and contents. And overall, more than half of the feedback on language dealt with mechanics, with errors in punctuation, spelling, and handwriting. And the table 2 presents finding about feedback comments. These comments were mainly about structure and contents and appeared either in the body of the text or as end comments. And as you can see from the table, when the feedback was provided by individual learners, the proportion of positive and negative comments was evenly spread out. On the other hand, when it was provided in collaborative formats, the negative comments were more frequent, forming 69% of comments compared with 31% of positive comments. Most feedback comments were expressed as directive or a statement that something was amiss, often stated in a single word or short phrases. And very few comments were in the forms of suggestion or statement. Now I would like to compare between the positive comments and negative comments. So overall, the positive comments appeared at the end comments, often under the subheading. They included compliments such as great essays or well-used vocabularies, And many of these positive comments refer to the handwriting. And generally, the negative comments appeared in the body of the text and as end comments. And they also dealt with handwriting and punctuations. And the finding shows that a greater proportion of negative comments on structure and contents that were provided by pairs were more constructive compared to those offered by individuals. Now I would like to go over the results on student survey. The surveys revealed that most students prefer to the peer feedback. The most frequent reason for this positive attitude was that the peer feedback provide them with an opportunity to learn from each other, and that this would help them to improve their own grammatical accuracy. And furthermore, the researchers also found that the majority expressed a preference for the collaborative peer feedback. And there are two reasons provided in this paper. First, the most frequently mentioned reason was the opportunity to pool linguistic knowledge. And as for the second reasons, the student also felt that working in pairs enabled them to provide more comprehensive feedback. And the next part is discussion. The researchers found that the learners provided more feedback in the collaborative formats compared to the individual formats. So it appears that working with peers made the learners identify more weakness than when they read or evaluated a peer's text individually. And the focus of the feedback was similar in both formats. The learners focus mainly on errors in language, especially in mechanics. So this is the final stage. The findings suggest that collaborative peer feedback may encourage learner to provide more feedback, including more constructive comments than when providing peer feedback individually. The findings also shows that collaborative peer feedback provide the learners with opportunity for language learning, and the learners are more likely to engaging in questioning, discussing, and explaining certain information to their peers rather than simply just accepting it. And as for the limitation of this study, the researchers mentioned that since it has a small scale of participants, the study result can be tentative.